Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Welcome, ladies and gents. John and I are now tackling music of the 2010s. We do music of the 2020s, but that era isn't even remotely done with, so
Not at all.
not even remotely close. So, thank you once again for jumping in on one of these escapades.
Always good to be here.
Okay, I will let the guests go first.
Well, I figured I'd go start off with Anastasia by Slash.
Woo! He promised it, and he was right. We're gonna talk about Slash. Yeah, I mean, more or less, you really get to see just so much glory of just seeing how they evolve. And
Oh yeah.
Slash, I mean, he can kill it. I remember around that same time he was promoting that album on. I think, yeah, he was touring with Velvet Revolver as well, but he was also especially with on Conan, and I was like, man, the guy could play for days.
Oh yeah. And he proved it in this song, especially. You get to the end when it just keeps going and going until it eventually fades out. And he just found his groove, particularly with this album, since the first album was him actually having a bunch of artists on as guests. And that's how he eventually found the person he worked with and still does to this day. So,
Right?
which I'm glad because each album gets better and better each time.
Always.
And I can't wait for the album next year. That's all I can say.
Good pick. I mean, more or less.
Yeah.
I think also helps that, he wasn't going to let his negative experiences with Axl Rose being a dick and kicking him out, just get in the way of his own career.
That's true. And he always said he didn't want to be with somebody that has an ego, and well, he found the right guy that doesn't have an ego. And was a guitar player first before he was a singer. So
He was just with the wrong crew, really. I mean,
true.
It was like, might as well go where you're being appreciated.
And now he's back. He's now back with Guns N' Roses.
Right.
At least for now. That's why I say.
Now, until Axel dies or kicks him out again.
You could say that.
Then again, toxic people tend to, stay alive a
Yeah.
little longer. So
Sometimes.
sometimes. There were a lot of people I knew who were going around being their usual irresponsible self, and I was like, ugh, not even COVID can kill them. That's how shitty they are.
Yeah, unfortunately it takes to happen.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead with Purpose for Pain by Scott Stapp.
Ah, interesting.
Always admired him as a person. Wasn't ever hot, like, on his first few, like, he did, like, 2 solo albums by himself before he got back with Creed, and then they broke up again or some shit like that. And the song is just really instantly just sets you in the mood for it's like, okay, he really has come a long way. He's really trying to evoke a positive song, and it was so awesome seeing him in the recent Woodstock '99 HBO documentary and seeing him talk about how everyone was getting so caught up in just kind of what was the recent trends that they didn't even realize, whether or not they were saying something irresponsible or just sad or
Hmm.
kind of negative. And
It's interesting because the first that song I actually heard rather 2 months ago for the first time, and usually like his solo stuff I try to get into, but it just never piqued my interest until I heard that one, and that's what.
absolutely, like that album as a whole is like a totally different vibe because like the first one is like, okay, I'm fine with you being a Christian or whatever, not my thing, Christian rock.
Yeah, it was a bit much for that one.
Hmm.
I think I'd go with another band I mentioned before, which I do find to be quite underrated, and hopefully one day they can be known, which is the song that introduced me to them was Elevate by the Winery Dogs.
Mm. Yes, you
And
told me about these awesome badasses.
yeah, the trio of three guys. One was the drummer for Dream Theater. One was the bassist for Mr. Big back in the late 80s. And you had the guitarist and singer, who I say sounds like Chris Cornell. And I'll keep on saying that to this day. But they all managed to combine and make this great trio, particularly with their first album. And this is actually the opener of their first album.
Good.
And I don't know, it's just the right combination of hard rock, even blues rock at times, which I appreciate. And it's always on repeat for me every time
Totally.
I get to listen to it. I mean, why wouldn't it be at this point?
Right, really good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was glad you suggested that band to me because it's like, yeah, they're totally going to be big. And when they get big, you're going to be just like, oh, guys, I've known who they were, already a decade.
Like a few years ago. Like a few years, guys. Come on now.
Oh. Oh, man. So, what's your take on the ending by Papa Roach?
Hmm.
You can go
I'm not
ahead
sure
and
if I,
you can play to start that one up if you have.
I might have heard that, but I haven't heard Papa Roach in a long time, actually. It's the funny part.
Yeah, this is unlike anything else they've ever done, and I think it helps that more or less they kind of like Free Days Grace. They weren't messing with any of that dubstep or any shit like that. They were just kind of like, yeah, let's just be our own thing.
You pull that up if it will let me. There we go. Let's see, the ending, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. When you hear it, you're like, yeah, not anything I've ever heard.
Just be patient when the ads are gone. So
Be patient, little patience.
need a little patience. Yeah. I might as well do the Guns N' Roses. Screw it at this point.
I forgot who covered them recently.
Somebody must have. This is very different for them.
Indeed. Oh,
Hmm.
Papa Roach was always kind of just. I think everyone just kind of knew, kind of like Seether. They had a lot of songs everyone listened to at every other party or on every other, you know, digital platform, and yet
Hmm.
kind of only really knew them for just like free songs, and that was it. And then they kind of vanished for a while.
That's what it seemed like with them.
I always liked the Cut My Heart Open, and obviously, you know, Getting Away with Murder gets overplayed. The shit.
Or even Last Resort, who also might be
Oh
up.
God,
That was the one I knew them from
yeah,
first
Last
time.
Resort. It's good, but that got even more overplayed.
Oh yeah. It's
Sorry, guys. We're in the new metal scene. We dig it all. You can enjoy it all. Same thing with movies. If you want, you can. For every Fast and Furious, there's all the Transformers and Expendables and Avengers. So take and pick and choose.
very true.
Uh,
Well,
so,
figured I go.
yeah, please do.
So, I talked about Alter Bridge in the last podcast. I go into the side projects. So, first one I'll mention is the guitarist has his own band named Tremonti. That's his name, Mark Tremonti. And he it's actually more of like a speed metal band, but actually has melody to it, unlike other ones I've heard. Trust me. And the song that actually introduced me to him was Leave It Alone off his first album, which
Nice.
has moments of that, but also showcases his voice, which I think has gotten better over the years. You can tell, particularly once he did Alter Bridge, you can tell his voice started to come alive that time. And it's like with each album, he actually adds different elements
That's
to the
the best
music and to
kind.
the voice. And particularly his recent album coming out very soon, in a few weeks actually, funny enough.
Good.
And I always say, just like with the singer of Alter Bridge, who I'll also mention later, they just keep getting better and better. They just won't stop. That's not how they are.
Perfect.
That's why I've always liked them.
That's the best kind.
Definitely.
Okay, so even better. I'm gonna go with "Remember When" by Bad Wolves.
Hmm.
I know
Okay.
some probably didn't care for their cover of the Cranberries' "Zombie," and I'm like, I'll give them that. That got overplayed to hell
Yeah,
out.
that was not a great one to be introduced to them by.
No,
To be fair.
and listened to their album. I dug most of the songs except one that was just too self-indulgent, and um, they got a newer song, but technically that's like 2020, 21, so I'm not going to count that, obviously. But,
Yeah.
yeah, no, this song was really cool. Just seeing the whole, just him. It's kind of a cool kind of brothers in arms kind of movie. It's like two guys just on the run together, blood brothers. Dad was drunk, their mother abandoned them. It's like, yeah, this is like some kind of cool, dramatic action movie in my mind.
Hmm. That's what it
More or
always felt
less, it's a
like with
very
those
personal
songs.
song. Oh, many of the songs definitely have that vibe where it's like, yeah, why isn't someone done a YouTube music video of this?
Oh, they might one day, trust me.
Well, they definitely will. Yeah. So, what do you like about Bad Wolf's main vocals and their hard rock style?
I think
If anything.
it's interesting, considering, some vocals, like I said, can be grating when it's just too whiny or if they just overdo it. But this vocal, I think, has the right balance at times, and it's very moody, even, I'd say. And that's probably why I've actually started listening to them recently. After not only from the cover of Zombie, but also, if I remember correctly, might be wrong, but then they had a song on the 2016 Ghostbusters soundtrack, which is probably one of the only songs I could listen to off that soundtrack. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a different story. But no, they're just, I'll say they are unique. That's the right word to use for them. And not in a bad way, in a good way. That's how I describe them.
That's a good one. Good way to do it.
Well, I figured I also go with a newer band. This is one that I also got introduced because they've been like an opening act for some of the bands I listen to. And the song, well, I had one of those songs on a commercial one day, but the one that really impressed me, which showcased the singer's voice and the band itself, was Too Bad by Rival Sons.
Hmm. Well,
And
please definitely send me a link to those guys. Okay.
yeah, they're like, they're also another one that people like to compare Led Zeppelin. I mean, I'd say like a little bit, but the more stylized that's it, Led Zeppelin was.
Interesting. Because,
Yeah.
right now Dirty Honey's kind of the one right now lampooning, not lampooning, but kind of a knockoff and a tribute band
Yeah.
to Led Zeppelin, and yet I really probably only like maybe I can listen to their songs, but I don't know any of them apart from the other. They're just kind of one big blur.
I
Good
think that
stuff.
first, I think their debut album that came out recently actually, I mean, they managed to showcase themselves, but that's another day.
Okay.
But
But these guys, you think, just do a better job kind of being
yeah.
influenced.
Plus the singer, he definitely has a range, and they managed to like experiment with those songs, whether it's this one or Do Your Worst, which is the other single they had in this album. And
Sounds like
and
a
I
movie
just,
catchphrase.
I know, but and it's weird because I read that the singer was not even like a rock singer. He was a soul R&B guy that
I'm a soul.
just happened to join this band and managed to fall in love with it. So I find that fascinating, especially about them. And they're just one of the hardest working bands I've seen as of late. I mean, besides before COVID hit and everything.
Oh boy.
But I mean, they're at least trying, and I give them credit for that. Unlike some who just give up. But I'm not gonna say who. But yeah,
Oh dear.
that's definitely one you should check out if you get a chance.
Please send me the links. I will do that.
Oh yeah.
So I am a big fan of Rain Dance Maggie by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that's all I got for this era because this was a chaotic era.
I think I got 4 more off this era.
Okay, good. Again, guys, this was a clusterfuck of a era.
Yeah, they
Oh boy.
but the other band I also found out about thanks to a radio show host named Eddie Trunk, who I listened to because of he did that metal show on VH1 Classic.
Is he
And
actually in a trunk while he records?
no. I'm surprised nobody's asked him that. But
What the trunk?
he had talked about this band that was open for AC/DC before Brian Johnson eventually left after that whole debacle there.
Brian Johnson.
And this band that he introduced was called Tyler Bright and the Shakedown, which is interesting enough. Though another band that's one of the members, I think it's the other guitarist, is actually the son of Brad Whitford from Aerosmith, which I didn't find that out till a
I
year or
heard
so
about
later.
them being on some other band, the guitarist. So that's very cool.
And with a song that
Oh, God, that made like the headlines recently because then they come out with a single recently.
I think so, yeah.
Single.
But there was, I mean, I could name quite a few of theirs, but the one that I'll go with is from that recent album on to the next, which is just a simple hard rock song that showcases what they can do. And I mean, that's all I could say about that. I mean, I don't know what else I could say, but let's see. We got, well, I also have Bush. They had one of those songs, Sound of Winter,
Yes.
which I did
Fuck
like that
that
quite a
album.
bit.
That was a great album. And then they kind of just lost their mojo for a bit just because, they
Well,
had that. Gavin Rossdale had that divorce.
yeah, that, oof, don't want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. I got Hailstorm, Killing Ourselves to Live was another one that I also quite liked. This is from 3 years ago now. God, that feels weird to say it's 3 years ago. But anyway,
You're right. These years we this is kind of where we just got to where it's like, okay, so we're working and man, time has already flown by. I thought Thanksgiving I just got done celebrating. Shit like that.
but it's interesting with this song because it's actually them talking about how they're literally killing themselves to live, to tour and make music, and it's a hard life, which makes sense for a lot of these bands. That they literally are doing that, especially if they become huge and they just won't stop. That's the problem with some of these managers who just don't give two shits.
Yeah, there's
And
plenty of them.
that's what
Either
that
that
song
or
was talking about.
mm-hmm. And there's definitely too many artists who are just touring and they clearly don't want to tour, even though that's how they make money.
Yeah, so literally off their march, pretty
And
much.
don't get me wrong,
That's
there's
fine.
just gonna be dicks. I'm sure
Oh yeah,
there's plenty of them who are just as bad as the movie producers, where they're just not happy with the final thing, so they only they do less promoting of it.
yeah, that's the other problem.
That's why everyone stopped taking all the box office results, way too seriously. It's like there's plenty of those where it's like, yeah, I'm not buying any of that.
Well, then this is gonna be an interesting choice I made because now I only heard this band because of one certain artist that showed up with them on SNL back in 2015, and the song that this person joined was called "Heavy Is the Head," and the artist is Zach Brown Band, a country
Yeah,
band featuring Chris Cornell.
they did a pretty good cover.
And I remember that surprised me when that he showed up. I'm like, "What? Is that Chris Cornell?" And it was actually a surprisingly heavy song for a country band of all things. And they actually managed to weave, Cornell's voice in and out, particularly at the end when he gets the chance to shine, which I love. Always to see Chris
Yeah.
Cornell shine.
Oh man, my brother
And
put Zach Brown Band on blast multiple times. He was kind of very interested in how he's kind of got a country and a rock background, and he just lets loose
you
each
can
time.
tell they do.
Oh, totally.
They are totally a fan of. I mean, they've even played with, the Foo Fighters and
Oh yeah,
I forget who else, but
they're the kind who are gonna go around and they are gonna. You already got in your head is like they are roaming around on their trucks and
that's
cowboy
true.
hats ready.
And then, well, you know what? Actually, I got two more real quick. There's, speaking of another band, well, one from the 90s, I think I go with Stolen by Alice in Chains.
Okay.
As that's, I mean, it has a typical Alice in Chains sound, but it has the new member who's with them, who you could say replaced Lane Staley, but they don't really have like a actual replacement singer for the band. It's mostly the guitar singing for the most part. But their voices together actually blend very well, and it has that, like I said, signature sound that Alice in Chains is known for. Very moody and dark, but not, overly pretentious like some bands would be with that. And I've always said it's one that you can play during Halloween because you can scare the hell out of little kids with, which
Fair enough.
I tend to do sometimes. Um, Sorry, neighbors. Anyway, but and then the last one I'll mention, because I might as well. Speaking of Foo Fighters, and I know this is a song that gets overplayed a bunch, because I might as well say it. It was Rope by Foo Fighters,
Yes.
but I still enjoy that song, even though it was overplayed. And
Mm-hmm.
it fit their style well. That's really all I could say about that. And if I had to do album mentions, which I probably have two of them, there's another band I got introduced to because of Eddie Trunk, and he had recommended this band because he kept praising them. I'm like, I don't know who this is. And when you see them, you think it's a Motley Crue ripoff, a parody band somehow from Britain. But the song I heard from them was "Kiss This" by the Struts, and when you hear it, they're more of like a throwback to 70s, 60s, 70s pop rock esque, you'd say.
It's definitely the
And,
vibe I think they were going for.
and I actually think it works for the most part. Like it's
When you love
like a
some
nice
era
blend.
and you're so inspired by it, you're going to do a good job. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
the thing. We got a little disgusted when we saw so many other people who were just doing sappy, takes of other popular songs, and it's like, no, don't bother.
I think that's why this band works because they know what they are and they just go for it every time. And I mean, hell, the latest album they actually just teamed up with Tom Morello of all people, which surprised me. And so obviously
he
they have their
appears.
fans.
He reappears, and
Oh yeah, every now and then he will.
it really is interesting. I wish they would even do more documentaries about what are the most used like music studios now and their history. That would
That
be
would
an
be
interesting
fascinating.
one. Unfortunately, as close as we got was with that Sammy Hagar, doing the statewide tour and getting a
Oh yeah.
history of the venues that have had certain people play at this place, but
Hmm.
that's it. They don't seem to really go into any other detail, either that or maybe they don't. Who knows? Maybe some of those studios got tore down and relocated.
And probably the final one I mentioned, I think the album mentions was probably since I mentioned side projects for Alter Bridge, I figured I'd mention the singer Miles Kennedy with his
Miles
song
Kennedy.
"You Are the Tiger,"
I think
which
I definitely heard that one.
I'm sure you heard that one. Which was inspired by because it was the anniversary of when his dad died, but his
Mm.
dad was like a very religious nut, like to call
Oh
him,
boy.
and he didn't believe in doctors. And just one day when he was laying in bed, his appendix exploded. He died because he didn't bother seeing a doctor, and he wrote this song kind of out of anger because he was always mad that he didn't bother seeing a doctor and he believed in all that crap.
Right?
And you can feel it not only in this song but other ones on that album. Like he's letting all of his frustrations out, and it's very powerful actually. That's what I like to say.
It's the best kind. Being mad at
And
someone who just can't help himself, it's just ignorant and like you say, it's not just something you get over with.
eventually he did, and he just had his album out recently. which is also
Okay,
pretty
yeah, I
good.
definitely heard that one, but
Yeah.
I'll definitely be checking out more of this Alter Bridge stuff.
Oh, yeah, I mean, not only that, but also the solo stuff, because I think they actually managed to make that work within each other. And that's why I've become a huge fan of theirs. And I always mention them every time. Bring up either 2000s or 2010s. Because
For sure.
you have to at this point. But no, that's all I got there for the artists of this decade.
Perfect. It was a mediocre decade with lots of good underground rock stuff coming to light and getting more praise. It was pretty much the year of also just checking out the independent bands while you give the finger to the corporations. It's like, yeah, no. None of this.
That's pretty much what I did.
None of this pop shit. None of this other. I don't give two fucks. I mean, about when Jason Derulo is on the record of saying that he wasn't even doing the music like seriously, and he got a Grammy. I'm like, oh, you fucking hacks.
That's the worst kind of artist they are.
Well, name one good song about any soundtrack in Fast and Furious besides none of it.
Oh, see you again. That was great.
Oh, I cried at that. But did you care about anyone in it? No.
No.
I pity anyone who cries at that. I really do.
I don't. I'll just say that right now. It's like if you like it, folks, that's all good. But I'm sorry, I'm just not into that. That's all I can say.
If Jason Derulo goes near Pixar or any other kid-friendly,
oh God,
I will give up any of these companies. But that's hardly the worst. Don't get me wrong. We've already talked enough shit about all the pop artists who are like,
true.
Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, Lady Gaga. It's like, oh my God, please stop.
Kanye West, you could say.
Kanye.
Ugh.
I don't know why you have this many fans when you're just this big a dick.
Well, you almost rival Trump, but anyway. I didn't say that.
Off the record again. Thank you all for listening. Hope you were entertained. Sorry if they pissed you off with all these artists we don't like, but trust me, there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them who you're going to be like, oh man, why is this getting played?
It's just our opinion, folks.
I mean,
that's all it
Richard
is.
Cheese had his work cut out for him when he was just parodying so many songs.
Oh, definitely.
He even made fun of the Panda Panda song. I don't even know who the fuck does that one, but
I don't even know either, to be honest.
brilliant. He's not saying anything besides Panda 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 Panda. It's like, might as well be a Pokemon ad.
I'm surprised it wasn't.
Go for it.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games, music. Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
what else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough
How could you watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
Lady, it's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything. Pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant. 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VD Clinic Pod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VD Clinic Pod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.